G'day and welcome to our remote learning webinar number 2 with the Tasmanian Department of Education. My name is Troy. I am from Microsoft. I am a learning delivery specialist, and today we're going to discover Microsoft Office 365, looking at that in a remote learning environment or a remote learning context, but also looking at it outside of that as well, and some of the things that we could do, when we get back to school as well. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through some of the basics. I'll show you my agenda in a moment. We'll definitely have Q&A open as well, so if you've got any questions, you'll be able to feed them on to Jess. And I'm going to ask Jess to come off mute and introduce herself and tell us what she normally does outside of COVID and what she's doing now inside of the whole COVID thing.
Thanks so much, Troy. Hi there, everyone. My name's Jess Erhart, and I typically work from Microsoft's flagship retail store based in Sydney. But due to COVID, we're all working remotely, and we're very fortunate to be supporting our education team for Microsoft Australia by helping support some of the online training sessions that are being run all around Australia at the moment to support the various departments of education. So I'll be here answering your questions in the chat or helping raise up your questions to Troy during his delivery today.
Excellent, thanks for that. Now, the cool thing about these is these are going to be recorded. So I would say the majority of people that are watching this now are actually watching this after the fact, so you won't be able to access the Q&A. However, if you do have questions, I want to invite you to come to this page here, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. So throw that into your browser, look us up and come and visit us. Everything you need to know about remote learning from a Microsoft Australia perspective is there on that page, but there's also a link there for you to fire away your questions. And I can tell you now there are real people on the end of those links who are taking your questions and fielding them to the best people at Microsoft to answer them for you. And we 100% definitely will get back to you. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is the slides and the recordings for not just this webinar, but all the different webinars that we've been doing. They live there at tlc.education.tas.gov.au. You'll have to click in and find exactly where they are in that website, but that's definitely the place to go. Now, in terms of our webinar today, let's have a look at what we're going to do. So we're going to look at the Microsoft Educator community. I'm going to explain that to you and tell you all about the cool things that you can do in there. We're going to look at Office versus Office 365, because a lot of you are probably used to Office that you know and love, and you've heard of this Office 365, but what's the difference? What can we do with both of them? Then I'm going to show you some Office software, free for you, paid for you by the department. I'm going to share with you how to access that. Then we're going to log into 365. We're going to do a bit of an overview of that. We're going to explore OneDrive. We'll have a look around Teams, and then at the end, I'll take you through some of the next steps and show you where to go from there. So this is our Microsoft Educator Center. Excuse me, I'm just going to get rid of that little annoying thing there. That's annoying me. So this is the Microsoft Educator Center. It is education.microsoft.com, so it's a web page. So please notice there's no www. It's education.microsoft.com, and I'm just going to jump into that and show it to you because it's probably much easier if I do it like this. Now you can see here when you come to the Educator Center, again education.microsoft.com, you can sign in, and you just have to use your school email address and password, so your department email address and password. You sign in here, and then it starts to keep a record of everything that you do. All right, so we have courses. I'm going to show you what these look like. So we have individual courses. So for example, if we're here today looking at Office 365, we want to look at Office 365 courses. Here's all the series of courses that we have. And one, for example, streamlining efficiency with Office 365 apps. You can see that's a 1-hour course. Okay. You can see that these are the learning objectives here. And once you start the course, well, then there's video and text and, interaction and all kinds of bits and pieces that happen in there. Now, what it does is it records the workshops that you do, the online, the online courses that you do, and it creates for you an audit sheet, which means that if you get audited by the Tasmanian Teacher Registration Board, you can actually present this as genuine PD. And yes, it is recognised PD because it meets the AITSL standards. All right. So I just want to stress to you that to find these courses, remember we start at education.microsoft.com. We click on Browse Courses, and then we can search what we're looking for. Now, they're not just product dressed up as professional development, right? So, for example, if I wanted to look at something like coding, there's a whole heap of different coding courses that I can access. Some of it's connected to Minecraft, some of it's connected to Lego, some of it's connected to OBOT, etc. And even Q. All right, so we can find things by topic, we can find things by product name, etc. Now, the other thing that we have in here is we have what's called learning paths, right? So learning paths are groups of courses that have been put together. So for example, if we come in here to one called 21st Century Learning Design, look at this, 20 hours worth of PD. So that's a 20-hour course that you can do. And you can see that what we've done is we've grouped these courses together. In this case, it's in a systematic linear fashion. But depending on the course that you're looking at, let's look at something like getting started with Office 365 and Windows. You can see here that there are 4 courses in there, but really you could jump in and out and do it in any way that you or any order that you wanted to. As long as you do them all, then you will eventually get the full credit for that learning path, all right, for that group of courses. Remembering too that it keeps a record of everything you do, so you get badges and points, but the real heart of it is to remember that you've got that audit sheet, and you can pull that audit sheet out. You can pull it out as a PDF, share it with the TRB, or even share it with school leaders, etc. Okay, so that's the Microsoft Educator Center. The other thing I want to let you know is that we have some really good courses around distance learning, all right, remote learning, etc. This is going to be key for you if you want to come in and get in and do things at your own pace and at your own leisure. Okay, so that's the Educator Center. Now remember, we're going to use those courses to hit our professional development hours, as well as genuine learning for what we need in this environment. Okie dokie, let's keep moving. So I want to talk to you about Office. Now, when I run this workshop face to face, I normally say, okay, put your hands up, if you've used Office today in some way, Microsoft Office, and usually almost everybody in the room will put their hands up. And I usually ask, what do you use the most? And people say, oh, Word. And I say, oh, what about email? Do you check your email? And then people click, oh, of course, Outlook. Outlook is the one that we use all the time. But we know that there is a massive saturation of Office, whether that's Office 2016 or Office 2013, whatever you happen to be using. There's a massive saturation of Office in the business world, but also in schools as well. And so there's Office that we know and love. So the most recent version of Office was released in 2018, and to confuse us, it's called Office 2019. And that is the Office that we know and love installed down on our machine. All right, so you may be using Office 2016, which is a 4-year-old version of Office. You may be using Office 2019, which is a 2-year-old version of Office because it was released a little bit earlier. But that's the Office that we know and love: Word, PowerPoint, Excel, OneNote, etc. But what we did is we threw in this thing called Office 365. I shouldn't say we threw it in. They built this thing called Office 365, which is Office in the cloud. Okay, so Office using our browser. So if you were to open up Word Online, which we're going to have a look at a little bit later today, you can see that we have the ability to collaborate and share and do all that kind of stuff without having all the full Office installed on our machine. So whether we're coming in on our Mac or our PC or our iPad or our phone, whether we're using the dedicated apps or just coming in through the browser, we're actually able to use Office in the cloud. Now, Office 365, let's call it that. Office 365 lives in the cloud, and then Office lives on our machine, installed down on our machine. But these two talk to each other. Okay, so when Office in the cloud doesn't do what I want it to do, then I can open up Office, the full version, and be using that, and vice versa. Okay, so that's the difference between Office down on our machine and Office up in the cloud. Now, there's another version of Office called Microsoft 365. It used to be called Office 365 Pro Plus, and it's just recently been rebranded as Microsoft 365 Apps. So the Microsoft 365 Apps is like, I want you to think of it as a combination of the installed version and the cloud-based version, okay? But what happens with Office 2019 is, or even 2016, is that these versions of Office don't mature in terms of features. So what I mean is, when you buy Office 2019, it will look the same and act the same as long as you own that product. Okay, and the same with Office 2016. All right, but Microsoft 365 apps, what happens is it's a full installed version down on our machine, much like this, but it's constantly being updated with new features. So what's happening is it's what we call a subscription service, and it's software as a service. And so the software, as new features, as new updates, etc., are put in, they're automatically added into that version. So by having this version of Microsoft 365, this is actually apps. This has actually got the best and latest version of Office available to us. Now, what the department have done is they have actually bought for every student and every teacher in the state a subscription to Microsoft Office 365, but it comes with 5 free copies, which means that you can put that on 5 different machines. So you can put it on your work machine, you can put it on your home machine, you can also share it with family members who live in the same address as you. Okay, so you can share that directly to your husband, to your wife, to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend, to your mum, to your sister. As long as you're all living in the same house, then you can share those 5 free copies, and they work on your PC and on your Mac. All right, I'm going to talk you through how to access that a little bit later. Okay, so when we sign in to Office in the cloud, we have to remember that we use our school email address and password, just our regular school email address and password. We come over here to www.office.com, www.office.com, and then we sign in. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like over here. So I've signed in already to a version of Office. So this is my tenant. I'm not in the department space, but I'm in my own space. Yours is going to look very similar. Now I want to point out a few things. Can you see up here where it says install Office, right? This is where I go to grab that software. And if I click on this, you see I get the option to install the Office 365 apps. Okay, so that's what you do. If you want to get one of those 5 free copies, jump on the machine that you're wanting to use, that you're wanting to install it on, sign into this website here, and then click on Install Office 365 apps, follow the instructions, and it will write the latest, greatest version of Office onto your machine. If you hit an error message, you may find that you'll need to uninstall your current version of Office and then go through this process. But you've got access to this recording, so you can go back and watch this again and work out how to do it. But remember, come to office.com, sign in, click on Install Office, and then click here, and that'll download the latest, greatest version for you. All right, so that's how we do that. Now, that's the full software down on our machine, but look what I've got here. I've got a series of other apps. Now, these are the cloud-based ones, okay? So these are the ones that live up in the cloud. I don't need to install them. So if I can go into Word Online, which we'll have a little bit of a look later. I can go into Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, etc., and use the browser-based versions of those tools. And you're looking at this and thinking, okay, there's a lot there, but actually there's a whole lot more. You can see here where it says All Apps. When I click on All Apps, you can see I've got a lot more than just Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. And I can also access my apps over here with the app launcher. So when I click on that, you can see I've got my basic apps here, or a basic list. But when I click All Apps, you can see I've got a whole lot more that I can access. All right, so that's how you can access your apps. Now, if you get lost at any time in Office 365, you don't know where you are, just remember, come back to the app launcher, click on Office 365, and that will take you back to your start page. Now, another thing I want to share with you is you see this little settings wheel over here. If I click on my settings wheel, you can see there that I've got themes. I'm going to click View All, and I can actually choose my themes. Now, this is really nice for personalizing and letting your students know how to do this as well. So I can actually choose a theme that suits me. I've got some of the smaller themes as well as some of the larger themes, and it's just a really nice way to personalize our 365 experience, or at least our Office experience. Okay, so that's how we do that. Now, depending on when you come down here, you may be able to change it into dark mode, depending on the way your tenant has been set up, and you may be able to change notifications, etc. But some of these might be controlled by the folks down at the department. So keep that in mind. But that's how we we change that. And you can see also it's showing my recent files, and it's got, you know, my OneDrive, etc. But we'll come into using that a little bit later. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to show you, forgive me for that. I want to show you how we would jump into Word and how we could possibly start sharing and accessing things with our students or even with other staff members, okay? Because we want to look at a little bit of remote collaboration. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Word. Okay, so this is Word in the browser. This is not the full version installed down on my machine. If I was to do that, I would just open that how I normally open Word. But when I come through here, I'm going to open a new blank document. And let's let that load. Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out to you. First of all, this is Word in the browser, which is not the full version of Word, but it can do some things that the other version of Word doesn't do. All right, so some of the collaborative stuff is much better on Word Online than it is down on the other version. But I want to point out to you, can you see up here, here's my title. All right, so there's no save button. Did you notice? Because it's auto save. All right, so if I want to change the name of my document, I'm going to change that to TAS DoE today. That's what I'm going to call my document. And where do I want it saved? Okay, I can choose where it's going to be saved in my OneDrive space, but I'm going to leave it exactly where it is. And then you can see there that we've already set it up as a saved document. Now, look at this. I've got the ability to access my File tab. You can see there my Home tab, Insert, Layout, References, etc. It does a lot of what most of us want Word to do. It's not going to do things like mail merges and some of that more sort of, you know, sort of tricky stuff or more in-depth stuff, but it's going to do what most of us want Word to do. But when it doesn't, can you see this button here that says Open in the Desktop app? If I have the full version installed and I'm in partway through a document, when I click on that, it will open the full version of Office or of Word, and I can continue working in the full version. I can have them both open at the same time. All right, so if I was to insert a table, for example, and then I wanted to, you know, put something in the table, I can do it just like I could in Word. So if you know Word, you're going to know Word Online. You don't have to relearn. All right. Now, I want to talk to you about how we share. Now, you can see there's a share button that lives up here. So I click on the share button and I get this little dialog box that opens up. Now, the first thing we notice is it says anyone with the link can edit. Now, yours in the Tasmanian Department of Education, that's actually going to be grayed out. You're only going to have the option to share with people in TAS DoE with the link, all right, which is that one there. Now, what that means is you cannot externally share with people that are not in the department or don't have department email addresses, okay? I can choose whether I want this to be a read-only document for everybody or whether I want them to be able to edit it. Okay, so read, write, or read only. I can also block the download, which means that I let people share it, but I don't let them download their own copy of that that document. All right, so I'm going to set that now as I'm going to allow editing, and I'm going to apply. Now, what happens then is I have to look people up. So you can look people up in the department. Okay, you can look them up by name because you're using the department's Active Directory. So, for example, if I'm going to look up one of my colleagues, his name is Travis. I just start typing his name, and then you're going to see if there's a whole heap of Travises, they'll all come up. But I know my friend is Travis Smith, and then I'm also going to look up another staff member. Oh, excuse me, don't need to put that out. Her name is Megan. Okay, look at this. I've got all these different Megans. All right, so in this case, I know it's Megan Towns. All right, and then I click send. Now, when I click send, what's going to happen is they're going to get an email invitation to this document, and they can come in and start working on the document with me. So what that looks like is if I invite multiple people to Word in the browser, you can see there that we can all be on the document at the same time. We can be collaborating and communicating on that document, and we can be seeing what each other are doing. So you remember once upon a time, if you tried to open a document on your shared drive at school and it said, you know, read-only access, user 2573 is currently using that document. Those days are over if we keep things in the cloud, because now instead we can be on the document at the same time. We can be seeing what each other are doing. You can see those little flags, so we can be identifying who's there. It's really quite a great experience, right? So that's what happens when we share. So to be able to do that though, we need to make sure that we're going to keep all our documents, all our Office documents in the cloud. If we want to be able to collaborate, if we want to be able to share, then we have to keep it in the cloud. And we have our own little portion of the World Wide Web, our own little portion of the cloud called OneDrive. Okay, so if we keep our documents inside OneDrive, then it has the potential to be collaborative. We can share, we can experience what we just saw a moment ago. Now, the cool thing about OneDrive though is, look at this, 5 terabyte of storage per user, right? So as I joke, that's a whole lot of downloads, right? That's a whole lot of space that we can actually keep in the, that we can actually use in the cloud. Most of you, if you're looking at your laptop in front of you now, or your desktop, you'll probably find that 5 terabyte is somewhere between 10 to 20 times more storage than your local device. Okay, so there's a whole lot of space up there in the cloud. All right, let's keep moving. So I want to take you into OneDrive. I want to show you how OneDrive works and some of the cool things that we can do with OneDrive, because OneDrive is much more than just collaboration. It is much more than just storage, although, as I said before, it is definitely those things as well. So where do we find OneDrive? Well, when we're on our Office 365 start page, I'll bring us back. When we're on our Office 365 start page, we can find OneDrive sitting right here, or we can usually find it in our app launcher over here. So I'm going to jump into OneDrive, close down a couple more of these. All right, so this is my OneDrive space. All right, so these are my folders and you can see my files. There's that TAS DoE file that we just created. All right, so these are my files. Now, the thing about OneDrive I want to point out to you is OneDrive is living in what's called an Azure data center, right? And there are 2 data centers that we're using in Australia as teachers. One is in Sydney and one is in Melbourne. So when we talk about the cloud, I want you to think about the cloud is not really up in the sky. The cloud is just a metaphor, an analogy, whether it was made up by someone in marketing or made up by someone in IT, I don't know, but it's not really a cloud, okay? What it is it's huge, big data centers, and inside those data centers are rows and rows of computers. And you've got 3 machines that you've got your stuff stored on in Sydney, and 3 machines that you've got your stuff stored on in Melbourne. So your information is backed up 6 times. Okay, so I'm now looking here at OneDrive through the browser. So I'm looking at all this data, and it's, as I said to you, it's stored in Sydney and Melbourne. All right, so you can see I've got my folders, and you can see here I've got my files. All right, now over here you can see I've got my files. So these are obviously all my files and my folders, etc. I've also got the ability to look at recent files that I have accessed. All right, and you can see 7 minutes ago we were just in TAS DoE today. I've also got the ability to look at shared files. Okay, now there's 2 kinds of shared files. There's files that have been shared with me. Okay, so files that have been shared by other people. You can see here Amanda shared a file with me, SharePoint shared a file with me, Trent's shared a file with me. Okay, so these are files that have been shared with me, and I can access those from inside the shared section there. But I've also got shared by me. Okay, and shared by me means that I have shared these folders and files with other people. It's really good to know that that's there, because sometimes you share things and you forget, and it's really good to go back every once in a while and check through, do these folders and files still need to be shared? Another thing I want to share with you or make you aware of is what's called popular around me. So these are folders and files that are being used regularly by people in my organization that are open to be shared. All right, so they've shared them with me, or they've shared them with other people, and they're open documents. And that means that, you know, there may be things that I look in here and go, oh, Megan's working on this, and I can get in and have a look. Whether it's a student or a teacher, it doesn't matter. We've also got a recycle bin. So the recycle bin is just like on your normal device. When you delete something, it goes and lives in the recycle bin. So too when we delete things in OneDrive, okay? We've got a recycle bin and things will stay in there for months, all right? So keep that in mind, that if you lose something, you can go back and find it in there. Now, another thing I want to show you is when I come down to these documents. Now you can see these documents here a little bit older. One was on the 18th of April, another one on the 5th of April, etc. Okay, now if I come down here to this one, MSFT school, and I click on these ellipses here, these three dots, you can see I get further menus, right? So I can open the document, I can preview the document, I can share it from here without opening the document, I can copy the link and post that out. I can manage access. I can decide who's got it, who's got access to it. Do I want to revoke that access, etc. I can download a copy, delete it, move it, copy it, etc. But the one I want to share with you here is what's called version history. Now you can see here there was 2 copies of that document, both made on March the 2nd, or at least opened and edited on March the 2nd. Now, if I had multiple versions, okay, and in this case I do, I've got 2, but I could have 10. What I can do is I can look at those documents, all right? So I can open that previous version, all right? And maybe someone has made changes on a later version and I don't like those changes. I can go back and I can restore that. That is make the older version the current version. But I could also open it, see what changes compare to the current version. You know, the sky's the limit, and I can also delete it. Now that's really important when you're working with students, because sometimes you might share a document with students and then one of them will go in and accidentally, or even on purpose, destroy the entire document. It's okay that you can go back and find a previous version and open that up, all right? And it'll go back quite a long way, all right? But remember that they don't last forever. All right, so that's some of the cool things that we can do with OneDrive. Now that's OneDrive, that's OneDrive in the cloud. But let's talk about OneDrive down on our machine, all right? So what I want to share with you now is I want to share with you what OneDrive looks like in my machine. Now, you guys, I'm sure you all know and love when you hover down here, you can see your little yellow folder, right, which is your file manager, your file explorer. When you click on that, you open up your file explorer. Now mine's in dark mode, yours is probably in normal white mode. But you can see there that I've got OneDrive, MSAU EDU01, that's my tenant. Yours will say Department of Education Tasmania or DOE Tasmania. But you can see here, look, there's all my folders and there's all my files. And if I come back here, you can see again, look, there's those folders and there's those files. So remembering I've got 3 copies in Sydney, 3 copies in Melbourne, but look what I've got here in Tasmania. I've got 1 more copy stored locally on my machine, which means I've got not 6 copies of my documents, I've got 7 copies of my documents. Now, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things here, all right? First thing I want to show you is I can see everything that's shared, right? It might be a little bit hard for you to see there, but you can see they've got these little person icons next to it. That's telling me that that document has been shared, all right? But I've also got these little clouds and I've also got these little ticks, all right? So I want to talk to you about what these mean. So if I click on our, where are we? Our TAS DoE document. If I was to click on that, that would open on the full version of Word because I'm opening it from my local machine, all right? But I'm wondering if you can guess what that cloud means. What about if I right-click that and I come down here and I change it to free up space? Look what happens. Oh, excuse me, not free up space. I want to always keep on the device. Look what happens. It starts to change and update, and then it's going to turn into, in a moment, just give me a moment for that to catch up. It's going to, in a moment, turn into one of those green ticks, all right? Because basically what that's saying now is that is stored on my machine, these green ticks up here, on my machine and also in the cloud. But if it's just got the cloud, like this one, for example, then that means that it's only stored in the cloud. And it also means that if I lose internet access, I can't access that document. All right, and if you're wondering what this is doing here, this little spin, there you go, it finally turned into a green tick, but that little arrow meant that it was updating. So the difference here is cloud means it's just in the cloud, it's not accessible on my local machine without internet access. And the green tick means it's stored on my local machine so I can access it even if I lose internet access. And how do we change that? Again, we right click on our file and we decide whether we want to always keep on the device, okay, which will turn it into a green tick, or we can free up space and that'll turn it back into the cloud. All right, so really important to note. Now you may be asking, why would I want things only accessible in the cloud? Well, because you've got 10 to 20 times as much space in the cloud as you have on your local machine. So sometimes it's going to be much more prudent and even convenient to keep it only in the cloud. But my advice to you is any files, and I'm just going to show you what I do here, any files that are key and that you must have access to at all times, that's okay, just click them, right click them, and then say always keep on the device, and then it doesn't matter if you lose internet, you can still access a copy of that, and when you reconnect to the internet, it will sync back to Sydney and back to Melbourne. All right, so that's the OneDrive sync client. Now the thing about the OneDrive sync client is we have to set it up. Now what I've shown you here is, what I've shown you here, and these slides will be made available to you, is you can actually get instructions on how to set this up for the PC and how to set this up for the Mac. All right, but you do need to sign in. Okay, and what we do is we come over to our little OneDrive icon, and then we click on it. If it will possibly at that point just open up a dialog window, you'll be able to input your email address and password, and then it will sync directly. But if it doesn't, you can right click. Okay, so right click that, come into settings. I'm just going to drag this up where you can see it. And then you can see here, I click on the account tab and I can add my account. All right, I do that and I'll get a dialog window for setting up OneDrive, which looks like this. And that's where you'll put in your department email address, etc. Okay, and that will create for you that will sync for you the sync client. Now that's for a PC. Mac users, you're going to have to go into that link. You go into your app store and you'll download the OneDrive client. All right. So that's how we do. That's how we do that. Now the other thing I want to draw your attention to, and again, when you get these slides, you can have a look through this. There's a way to actually what's called KFM or known folder move to sync your existing desktop documents and pictures down to OneDrive. All right, so again, you'll be able to access this when you get these slides. There's a link down the bottom here, or you can just go into your favorite search engine and just type in setup KFM OneDrive, and that you'll certainly find the article that way as well. All right, so that's a really cool tool to have. Let's keep moving. All right, so let's talk about Teams. Now, we did a previous webinar, okay, so our first remote learning webinar, we talked all about Teams and all the great things that you can do with Teams, especially with a class. So my suggestion to you is if you missed that one, please go back and watch that webinar because it's going to tell you all about Teams. But I do want to take you a little bit through some of the things that we can do around Office 365 inside Teams. Again, I'm assuming that you are across Teams at least a little bit. So when we come into our Office 365 start page, we find Teams and we open up the Teams app. Now you can have the full installed app down on your machine, but you can also have you can use the browser version as I've done here. Now across the top here, you can see I've got tabs. All right, so for example, if I've got posts, which is my conversations, I've got files, and I've also got the ability to add other tabs as well. But if I come here into files, this is where it's going to keep all my shared files inside that team. All right, so you can see here I've got my class materials folder. I could create new folders, so let's create another folder and call it correspondence. I click that. There we go, correspondence. Hit create. excuse me, let's call it talking. Going to be easier. Okay, so there's all our talking files. Okay, and whatever other files I want to create. Now I can also create inside here. I can create Word documents. Right. So let me show you what happens. I'm going to create a Word document. Let's call it TAS DoE 2. And hey presto, look at this. We've got the full Word Online experience inside Teams. So we don't have to go into the browser. We don't have to go into Office 365 or anything like that. It's all sitting here for us. Now I can create that document. Now you notice there's no share button because everybody that is a member of that team, because I've created in that team, already has access to it. So I don't have to go through that share function and share features, etc. You can see here I've got some ability to do a few things using the ellipses there, but when I come back, I'm going to uncheck that. When I come back in here, you can see that I can create new Excel sheets, PowerPoint presentations, OneNotes, forms, etc. All right, so there's no need to share because everybody is already a member of the team. Now, when I come up here, you can see here that I can add tabs right across the top. So I can add my PowerPoint files, my important Word documents. I can add websites, etc., my OneNote pages. So I'm bringing my whole Office 365 experience inside to Teams. Now remember, this is my shared files, right? But look what lives over here. Files. You may have to look at the ellipses to find it, but files is right over here. And so this is where I can bring my personal OneDrive, all right, into that space as well. All right, so you can link existing, not just OneDrive, but other file storage apps as well. Okay. So let's talk about next steps. In terms of remote teaching and learning, remember aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. Please access that. Also support.microsoft.com/education. I'm going to take you in and show you what that looks like now, because that's a really key website for you to know about. And that's here. So again, support.office.com/education. This is a really good help page for you because it's full of documentation, not just about Office 365 or Microsoft 365, but about this in the education space. So I can type my questions in up here, all right, but I can also come down and search by category. So if I'm wanting questions about Teams or questions about OneNote or Class Notebook or about Microsoft Forms for etc., or even teacher training and other apps as well, all right. So it's really, really good for you. If you haven't already bookmarked it, please support.office.com/education. And of course, the other one that I want to draw your attention to is remembering those courses for you at education.microsoft.com. Now, the slides and recordings for today's webinar are going to be available for you at that website there, tlc.education.tas.gov.au. We have a newsletter that's available for you, aka.ms/MEC newsletter. And if you'd like to connect with me via social media, well, let me get rid of that for you because that's going to annoy you. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Facebook. Now, I'm going to quickly throw and see if there's any questions that we've had. Jess?
None so far, but a good opportunity to pipe up now if anyone has any questions. Pop them in the chat.
Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, so if you've got any questions, throw them in, but remembering that link that I showed you at the very beginning, that Microsoft Remote Learning, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning, you can actually pump your questions in there and there will be real people at the end of the call to answer, sorry, at the end of those links to answer your questions. So I think we might leave it there today then, Jess. Thanks for everyone for being a part of it. Again, remembering if you've got questions, reach out to me on social media or feel free to reach out to us through our aka.ms Microsoft Remote Learning. That's all from us. Enjoy your day, Tasmania.